3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to Mission Control, Peralta Design's podcast on all things branding and digital marketing. Since 2008, Peralta Design has launched hundreds of brands with award-winning identities and websites. Join our hosts Ramon and Jorge as they use decades of combined experience to tackle topics with past clients, industry partners, and the rest of the PD crew. At Peralta Design, we launch brands. But for now, let's launch right into this episode of Mission Control.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode, this Stranger Things episode, and what you just heard is a very popular song there by Kate Bush. She's like in her 60s now and just reaping the cash. You know, I think she was out like working at a grocery store or something when they told her your song is popular again, you know. So
amazing that all this time later it's charting not only in the US but worldwide.
It's killing it.
Yeah.
It's killing it. So we've got a motley crew here. We've got myself. I'm Ramon with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. We've got Amanda.
Hello.
Amanda's our art director here at PD, and we have a special guest. We have our summer intern, the one and only.
Hey guys, I'm Rebecca.
All right, Rebecca, she's really hyped about this. She's got her 80s outfit on, corduroy varsity jacket or some sort. She's got it all. She's in full regalia for the 80s. And of course, my right-hand man, Jorge, that leads our web team.
What's going on, everyone?
Welcome, man. So let's get it on, man, because we've waited long enough. We've waited till we couldn't discuss spoilers.
That's probably a good thing to say up front. If you're listening to this podcast right now and you haven't finished Season 4 of Stranger Things, now's the time. Pause, go watch it, and come back. That way you can finish this episode.
Yes, all the kids will kill Vecna at the end. That's according to Amanda, spoiler alert. No, just kidding. But that's a classic. That's an inside joke here because that's how it finished, and Amanda told us that.
It came out like 30 years ago.
I know
been out for
there's
longer.
a statute of limitations. I get it. So let's start because this season was amazing. The worst part of the season is that they're saying that it's not going to continue for like 2024. Is that
right?
Yeah.
The next Season 5 is due out in 2024, which is just heartbreaking. How are we supposed to wait that long? But
And rumored it's the last season.
yes, that's what I've heard as well. So
So
they're
it's
supposed to
done.
wrap everything up, which I get it. I like when things have an end point.
Yeah,
And it's not just-
personally, 5 to 6 seasons, that is like the season sweet spot for me.
Yeah.
Like when a show can end within that range, I'm like, that usually means that they have a good story that had a good arc and a beginning and conclusion.
Yeah. And what I had a conversation with Rebecca about is I don't want them to do what they did to Lost, which was just continue to unravel the show so that it was like instead of answering questions, they just created more. And so we can look forward to hopefully the Duffer Brothers doing justice. Since you said they've written this thing in advance, they should be in good shape to wrap things up for us.
From what I've seen, they've actually plotted this whole thing out, and the question was there not at the end of every season if they were going to get greenlit by Netflix for the following season. So if you kind of pay attention, there's little kind of notes that stitch everything together, but every season could have kind of ended the story right there, and I'm glad that they were able to to unfurl the whole vision, and it's been a hell of a ride, and we've loved it.
All right, so who's going to dive in and start giving their take on this season and how amazing it was, and just on the series in general? We can go by character. You know, we can talk about specific scenes because we want this to just flow. And let's see who wants to get it going.
I just want to talk quickly about format and how they chose to release everything in standard Netflix binge style, which I think as fans you couldn't really kind of pigeonhole yourself into a corner, but I feel like they could have gotten the hype train to go that much longer if they would have done a week-to-week release.
I agree, but I think that all shows should be a week-to-week release because I don't like binge watching. But I also think it helps develop a conversation more, where it gives people time to be like, there's like an overwhelming feeling, I feel like, for me personally, when something is just all dropped at once, especially like this season of Stranger Things episodes were ridiculously long.
Right. You can binge a 45-minute show, 30-minute show, maybe an hour show, but a 2.5-hour show, you're pretty much, you guys have more energy. I'm the 80s guy here, so I'm 51. I'm ready to take a nap after that 2 hours, or I might even nap during the show and watch half of a 2.5-hour show. So that's what I call binging. What you call watching one show, I'm binging one show by watching half of it one night and half the other. But great point. I think they were, I've heard different numbers as far as like the budget for each episode. $72 million I heard was one budget. Is that in the realm?
I would assume. You've got a bunch of digital as well as practical effects, which I thought another great feature. The cast is stellar, and you would imagine that they probably asked for and rightly deserve a little bit more as time has gone on. You know what I mean? What Millie Bobby Brown probably got paid for season 1.
$30,000 per episode is what I heard on the first season.
Wow. So I'm sure that's night and day different from what she got paid for this season. And then, for me, it's just been this masterclass of what you can do when you let people's imaginations, take off and really tell this deep story. And I wanted to comment on how well, as somebody who grew up in the 80s, right? I feel like they just nailed this whole era so well. They did such a good job with the feel of everything, the sets, the cars, the music, the costume design. Every little detail just felt so authentic, and I just loved the way that they approached it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have, this is my topic here. The having lived the 80s, the cars. I'm a car guy, so I saw like there was one scene in particular where I saw like that's a '78 Toyota Celica right there. Like I had that car. That was like my first car in high school. The clothing, like I got a real kick out of Jim's jacket when they're finding the clothes in that Russian armory or whatever room that was that they were finding all these donated clothes, and he puts on that puffy red, white, and blue jacket. I was like, everything about it was like 80s. Of course, from the beginning of the show, the bikes and the banana seats and the BMX and all this, and the arcades and all this. But this particular season, it was a noticeable difference in budget increase in set design and character development, everything. They just went, these were like movies.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And coming from someone who I actually watched season 1 through 3 a year and a half ago. So I binged the first through third season in a week. And so I was like so hyped about it, but nobody around me was hyped. And so this is my first experience like actually being able to watch a season with like people around me being like, oh my God, did you see this? Did you see that? It was like, it's just such a culture that I'm feeling and I'm so obsessed with it. I think especially like the 80s being so nostalgic, that really being able to tie in more people to it. Yeah. Which was super cool.
Yeah, one of the funniest parts was, I'm just gonna, Ed. I love Eddie. I know he's a new character for this season, and he came and went in this season. But the scene when they're looking for music, never mind the fact that like I remember having a Walkman and listening to Michael Jackson's Thriller album on a Walkman, Sony Walkman. Like if you had that, like that was in cassettes. Period. When they're scrambling looking for cassette tape, and he's holding an Iron Maiden tape, and he's like, "This is music," and they're like overlooking that. I remember, like, there are a lot of things about today that have gotten better, and one of them is this ability to like just like be who you are and like a bunch of different types of music. But back in the 80s, like you could tell like all the kids that listened to Iron Maiden looked like Eddie. Like you had long hair, you wore Iron Maiden t-shirts. That was like your uniform, like an Iron Maiden t-shirt, long hair, jeans, you know, and then everybody else dressed differently, but they didn't listen to. It's like everybody was like segmented into, if you listen to this kind of music, this is how you dress. And if you listen to this kind of music, this is how you dress. And Eddie was like I remember kids in my high school that looked just like Eddie. You know, it's wild how you're watching a show, but they also captured the little nuances of growing up in that time where you were identified by the type of music you listened to and by the kind of clothes you wore. Even Will, his inability to come out in this season, you know, I think that was a very emotional scene. And now we're encouraging kids to be themselves and to you know, there's a high suicide rate. I mean, it's like a very serious topic. And back then you could see the pain in him trying to describe how he felt through the guise of it being 11. But you obviously thinly veiled, you know, it was him. But that also is a hallmark of a different time period in our country, in our society. You know, there are a lot of things that brought me back, you know, and that scene was one of them. The struggles, the blurring the line at that age of, is it my friend? Do I just care about him, or is it more? Do we have more feelings? And then your friends being clueless to those feelings.
It's an incredible testament to the quality of acting across the board, but especially for Noah Schnapp, who played Will. And I mean, he just had so many moments that just hit you right in the feels. That one moment where they're in the car and he's kind of like bearing his soul to Mike, you know, like you said, thinly veiled. I mean, he's just like, you know, you can kind of feel the anguish. And
he looks away, but when he looks away, it's almost like he's breaking the third wall, the fourth wall, because he's kind of like looking at you, the viewer.
Yeah. Right.
And then he turns back. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good that's a good observation too. You know, and I don't know. I'm trying to remember, like, if they planted the seeds for that in the early. I think he definitely.
They did
Amanda thought so.
Some things.
Yeah.
I think it's season 1 with the dad, with like the storyline with Jonathan, Will's dad. Like his dad thought that called Will queer at some point, or Joyce was relaying that to Hopper. The things that
right.
bother.
He said that they called him sensitive and all of these things. Yeah.
There was also that argument that I don't remember which season this was, but Will and Mike got into an argument, and then I think it was about 11, and then Mike goes, "It's not my fault you don't like girls." So there's like been like sort of like little hints throughout all the seasons, and I just feel like Will keeps getting the short end of the stick.
I think he's going to play a big role in the final season.
I think so too.
I think that's going to be his coming out party.
Yeah, because I just feel so bad for him. Not only does he have that awful haircut, like
he went to the Dumb and Dumber barbershop.
Listen, Noah Schnapp keeps asking the director to change the haircut, and they keep saying no. Yeah.
Listen, I had that same haircut.
That's your dad brutal. Cut your haircut. That's not a professional haircut.
No,
they just stuck a bowl on top of your
head.
head.
Sad. His storyline's sad, and the show even forgot the character's birthday. That's how sad he is. Like they established that his birthday, I think, is like March 22nd. And the day that 11 hits that girl with the roller skates, on the video camera, it's his birthday. And the Duffer Brothers just
forgot.
Everyone forgot. Even the Duffer Brothers, because they admitted, oh, we just forgot that was his birthday. We just happened to use the same day.
Oh, man.
So I guess, you know, so... another favorite cast member for me is Murray. Like, I would watch just the sideshow adventures of Murray. He could have his own spinoff, and the guy was just so just award winning for me. Like he's funny, but he's engaging. He says the action. He speaks all these languages. He's got kind of all this kind of secret hidden layers to him that I really enjoyed.
He can fight too, so
Oh yeah.
that whole scene on the plane, he was like kicking ass.
It was great.
Yeah. I feel like there's definitely like a whole entire story about all the different conspiracy
Yeah,
adventures he could go on. Like, there could be a season where he's chasing aliens or something.
I'd watch it. I'd sign me up. I think it was amazing to see how David Harbour has evolved over time. You know, as an actor, like all the different roles he's gotten since he kind of blew up with this role as Hopper, but then also how they kind of explain it in universe too.
yeah.
And you know, there was this.
Well, the best part of the season was discovering he wasn't dead, because we all thought he was dead. You know, it was kind of like they showed you like somehow he survived the blast and he's fine, and you know.
If you pause though at the end of that episode, the last one, season 3, you can see like at the bottom that like there's a way to get through. So there was a lot of speculation that
Yeah.
he was already alive, because I didn't see it. And then someone was like, no, rewatch the last like minute or two. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I also appreciate the transformation he made. That made it more realistic of him being a prisoner,
Oh,
because
right.
he had a dramatic weight loss. It was like you were in a concentration camp, and he came out of it. You know, I mean, they put him through some stuff, and then just getting like swindled and thinking he was gonna get out and not. You know, like that. The way they were able to like manage 3 or 4 different story arcs at the same time and keep you engaged in all of them was pretty cool.
That was really cool, especially because if you look at the cover, it's divided into that 4. And so you could kind of like know going into the series, okay, it's going to be really like 4 groups, which I really found interesting. I thought that I would be like, ugh, bring me back to this group. But no, the whole time I was like, no, keep me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
like,
amazing.
I was excited when I was in one group. And then when they switched, I was like, I wasn't disappointed that they switched, because at some point I would always go,
Like
I
most
wonder what's
shows, yeah.
happening with this group. And then as soon as I thought that, they'd show you what was happening
Right.
with that group.
With a lot of shows, the B or the C storyline feels forced or like filler, and I'm like, oh, why are we spending time? We're spending valuable minutes. Why aren't we getting back to the main story? But it all felt connected to me, and I was just as engaged with every storyline.
What
that
was
they
a
had.
big revelation that you didn't expect?
I think one of the things that surprised the hell out of me was kind of 11 and 1's origin story. Like seeing that scene unveil and how she really is kind of the one that created the monster, if you will, and seeing that there is a whole revelation of the Upside Down itself. When she banishes Henry there, before he truly becomes Vecna, it's shapeless. It's just
Right. It's a
chaos.
void, yeah.
Exactly. You know, they have these creatures, but the dimension looks nothing like Hawkins. And the question, I think, still remains, how do we get from this shapeless void to this kind of crazy copy of Hawkins? And
Yeah,
there's
it's
still
just
some
like
things to
literally
break down
upside
there.
down.
That was probably my biggest thing, is realizing that, you know, oh, this is the big bad. And then, you know, 11 kind of, her fate is kind of tied to him in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. The Mind Flayer was like a big red herring the entire series. It's not the Mind Flayer. It's always been Vecna.
Right.
Yeah, which is like crazy.
Right. How about, what did you think, Rebecca?
Something that I think I was like washing the dishes last night. I was just thinking about everything that was happening. And the one thing that stuck with me is what happened to Grissy. Like, what was that thing that made Vecna kill her? Because we know what happened to that kid. Like, he apparently caused a car crash. We know why Max, like, is supposed to die. But
Right, they all
what
have
did
one thing or
Chrissy
something. Yeah.
do? Because you, like, see her
One
in
thing
the
that haunts them.
But it's like the same thing with Barb in the first season. Like, she's a person and then she's dead in the first episode, and now we never know what happened to her. So is that going to be the same thing with Chrissy? Are we ever going to figure out what she did?
Right. I don't think they ever show
Yeah, it's not
Good point.
explicit, like what trauma.
what trauma she was undergoing. Well, I guess her mom.
Yeah,
Her mom,
it
her
says
dad.
something to do with
Like her mom.
family, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Would always kind of like, you know, I think she kind of developed like an eating disorder, it sounds like, from the way that her mom, but it doesn't seem like she did something in particular. You know what I mean? I think that between the other kid, like the newspaper editor kid, and Max, they all kind of shared this guilt of doing something, of committing an act. And I don't know.
But maybe because it's her mother, maybe there's some sort of like, children tend to blame themselves for.
There was a lot of that
happen.
in this series, and I felt like I felt that with 11 and Papa in his last breaths, where it was still her father. Like she still felt that connection anyway of like no matter how abused it made me think of like no matter how abused a child is, the child still yearns for knowing who their parents are,
The
or
parents' approval.
parents' approval, the disappointment, or I mean, like that was a very, very emotional scene because like she tried to kill him a number of times, and the whole scene about like you're the monster. Like this whole time I've been thinking about I'm the monster, and for me my biggest like revelation was I've seen that same scene where he says, "What have you done?" Like when a father says that to a kid, it's like, "What have you done?" And we've heard him say that, but they kept giving you a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, till you finally realize what he was referring to was her sending Henry, out into the void, and not. But all along up until this season, you thought he was referring to like all the dead bodies everywhere. And then she felt the feeling of like, I guess having passed out and then having her memories screwed with and everything. Like she starts living this whole time feeling like living with this shame. Like I killed all those people, so that moment was like super eye opening for me because it changed everything of what I thought he was all about. Like he was basically upset with her for doing that to one and not. Almost like he didn't really care about all the dead kids, which was really psychotic. Yeah. Like that's not what he was outraged about.
Yeah. I mean, he did force her to like keep looking into the void just to find him. Yeah.
He definitely like and then it's like parents always love their firstborn more, right? You have this sibling rivalry in a weird way.
Or the youngest.
There's just this weird thing where it's like that's all he cared about, but it also was it his fascination and like not realizing the limits of her power, like her being able to do that. Because I mean, like that whole scene, which I thought from a CGI perspective was dope, like how his flesh was like peeling off, and then like that whole animation was just like so well done. And of course, we could talk about the CGI of her as like a child. Which for the most part, you're looking, we're in the pixel pushing business, so we're like looking to see like where does it get fuzzy.
What
There's definitely moments where the lighting,
her chin,
there was moments where like the lighting was changing, where I feel like it was a little bit more evident. Sometimes I'm like, did they change it?
Yeah.
Like, it was hard to spot. And other times it felt more obvious. But this whole de-aging thing is wild that that they're able to apply this technology and it just keeps getting better and better.
And I was also thoroughly impressed with her wig. Like, she didn't cut her hair. That was just a wig. And I thought, I was like...
She didn't?
No. What? Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you serious?
You're kidding me. This whole time I was like, this poor girl has to shave her head for season 1.
That was a
Shaving
wig
her head
they made
again
for her.
Wow. Where have we come?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just that they had the CGI, but the practical effects too. Like the actual kind of set design of everything, which is one of my favorite scenes in the whole season when Eddie has to play that solo for Master of Puppets.
That was dope.
And it was so well done. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing for me is, as somebody who grew up hearing that song, I thought it was an early 90s song. Like I would have been like, oh, it's like Metallica 91. Like the fact that it was 86 was a surprise. But I literally said to myself, could you have a more metal scene than like just shredding on top of a trailer and the upside down? It was so great. And the fact that he actually played it blew my mind too.
Oh, wow.
I guess when they were first filming, the Duffers were sending Eddie texts of kind of like the actor who plays Eddie, texts of, hey, do you play guitar? And he was just like, yeah, I mean, I've dabbled, but I haven't picked it up in a while. And then he got the script, and it was like, oh, all right, I got to practice. I don't want to fake this. I want to play it for real. Mm-hmm. So he got to play it, and not only did he get to play it and did he kill it, but because it was filmed over the course of the pandemic, it was the first time that anybody cast or crew had heard live music performed in forever. So he felt this extra weight of like, not only do I have to rock it for Eddie, I have to rock it for, the experience of live music again. And it was just this incredible experience that he likens it to. And I'm blown away because he absolutely killed it, and I loved it.
I'm so mad they killed him off.
That's
Why?
I know, but
but that's the thing that they're so good at, the Duffers in general. Like Eddie fit in like he'd been there all along.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was attached to him as any of the other main characters.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking about like who could I live without,
but I became more. I have to admit, like I became more attached to him when it was revealed that Vecna was doing all the killing. Like I didn't think he was killing, but the fact that he was a suspect or he was being chased or he was on
the fact
the
that
run.
he died for this town that
Yeah.
hates his guts.
Exactly.
That's the horrible
But he
part.
found redemption in not running anymore like that.
Yeah.
I thought was valiant. I mean there was a lot of sheer bravery, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in that as someone that grew up on Encyclopedia Brown, 3-2-1 Contact, the Bloodhound Gang, Scooby Doo, even where you just have like a ragtag group of kids solving mysteries and murders and things like that. Like that all was Goonies. Like that was all captured in Stranger Things. I mean, very well done, and how brave these kids were to like fight against demons and bats and create ragtag weapons, garbage cans with nails, and
That scene was insane.
that was
There was so much that unfolded in that one
Yeah.
little like gun store with like the boyfriend coming in, and then Robin's like crush was there, and then I was like, what is happening?
my God. What did you guys think of Paul Reiser making a cameo again in this season and his character?
he's great. He fits the era. Again, he acts it phenomenally. I do wonder what's going on with. It seems like he kind of knows that 11 isn't at her potential. You know what I mean? And I feel like I'm curious to see what that potential is. Like, if Vecna's kind of only wounded and waiting for his return, he's going to come back bigger and stronger. I think she has to as well.
And Papa did say she needs to fly. So
Right,
in the
exactly.
final season, she actually does fly.
It makes you wonder, right? Paul Reiser, I think, but he's like the other kind of side of it where, Papa's kind of like this more kind of cruel
Senator
kind of
Palpatine. I see a lot of Star Wars, kind of references or homages or like you can point to things like even in their cover art. It reminds me of a Star Wars poster, for Stranger Things, and we were referencing the way 11 brought the chopper down was very much like a Jedi. And even when Henry or Vecna or one approaches her and says, together we can, we can take over the world, which is like every evil guy's like goal. It's like every bad guy, that's their goal. I want to take over the world. It's very simple. But when he approaches her about that and she turns him down, it's a lot like Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. Like they each have the power. It's like, are you using it for good or are you using it for evil? But to 11's point, like she's gotten this far feeling terrible about herself and has still been a force for good and has still been powerful. And now you can imagine her power is going to exponentially increase once she's releases this burden of feeling like I'm the worst person on the planet, and now she's like, no, I'm not the monster, but I've created one that wants to take over the world, and now I have to stop it. So I think we are going to see some big things out of her in the next season. Any other characters? Max and Lucas's relationship. I mean, that was another gripping, Emmy award-winning, scene.
I just loved all the scenes with her. I mean, I feel like she has the most iconic scene of the season where she's running from Vecna. That was fantastic.
Oh, with the
episode.
song, yeah, with the Kate Bush. That was probably one of the better episodes in the whole season.
So well done. And she, as an actress, again, the Duffers are just great at adding in a character who feels like they've been there all along.
Yeah.
Nobody feels forced. And she also just did a great job at just bringing things of her own. Like that whole part at the end when she's like, no, I'm not ready to die. I'm not ready yet. That was ad-libbed. It's not in the script. Like they just like felt the moment and went with it, and they kind of, roll with the characters. And that was a great moment too. And just a quick aside, speaking of rolling, I just loved the whole beginning. It's so seeped in this whole D&D campaign that they're playing, and it just, I think this says a lot about like the cultural milestone that we've arrived at. D&D is seeing this huge surge in popularity in general. There's all these YouTube channels and podcasts, and something that was very much kind of painted in, oh, if you play D&D, you look like this, or you know what I mean?
It goes back to what I was saying before with the 80s. It's
right.
like you were you were stereotyped, or you were put in a bucket.
Right. And I think we're seeing that evolution, and the fact that they could bring it to this show and it be so, and it have people be inspired to say, I want to give that a shot. That looks like fun.
Yeah, Jorge, we should give it a shot. When are we gonna play?
That's a good idea. I mean, maybe we'll do a campaign where we can record it kind of like this. That might be fun.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll see.
Well, Max lives, except she's heavily damaged.
So that's a theory that
Or
I
is she?
have. Well, okay. So my theory is this: it's kind of like, Vecna needed this ritual to be completed in order for the gates to be opened, and one of the rituals is incomplete now that Max ends up living. So it makes me think about like that's gonna be like this weak point where he needs to come back for her in order to get his plans to go into motion. There's gonna be some kind of thing where that's like the crux of the thing where he needs to come back and actually complete it, so he can unleash his full power, something to that effect. There's definitely some extra pieces there. I'm really looking forward to see how this final battle plays out, especially knowing that we've got a couple years to wait until it comes out, and they're going to be doing a time skip.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like X number of years later. Yeah.
Oh, so that means Max will be in a coma for a couple of years.
All right. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe she comes out of it and there's something after the fact. Like we have no idea what happens.
I don't know. The fact that when 11 went in her mind, it's just an empty void.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel so positively about that. Like I feel like her mind is trapped somewhere, and they need to find her and bring her back.
I'm wondering how this is going to last a few years if Will's already getting like that tingly sensation in the back of his neck. Like, is it just going to, that tingly sensation?
Well, we had a theory about that. It's more or less like Vecna's way of keeping tabs on them. It's almost like a tracking device.
Oh my gosh.
So because we were wondering, well, why hasn't this evolved since what was it, season 2, where he goes into Upside Down and comes back and is relatively fine. Like I almost forgot that he had that until now you realize like no, it's still in there. So it's more or less maybe I do think he's gonna play a bigger role in the final season. Maybe he's so weak that he becomes a host, or Vecna comes through him. Who knows? It remains to be seen. But what are some closing thoughts on this season, or some of the characters, or is there anything that you think could have been done differently?
I mean, I don't have any complaints, honestly. I loved it all. Another great surprise was Robert Englund, so the guy who plays Freddy Krueger.
Oh yes. When they went to the jail, that was we gotta mention that. Like, that was during when they were trying to figure out who did this. So he was basically Henry's father,
right?
In effect, who got blamed for the murders.
He nailed his role.
Yes.
But the fact that he's the original Freddy Krueger, and you can see
Another
a lot of the
classic
inspiration.
80s horror.
80s horror.
Yes.
Definitely influences this whole thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This season in particular. I know a lot of people who were like, had a hard time watching it because they turned the dial up on the horror so much, and they weren't really ready for that.
It wasn't
Oh, I
sci-fi.
loved
It
it.
wasn't sci-fi as much as it was horror this season. It was
I
scary.
want more horror.
Right.
I love horror.
Addicts are
Not that
scary.
much.
You know, like addicts are scary. Kids are scary. Like all these, like these were all 80s formulas.
But I think that's the thing too. It's talking about 80s formulas that I feel like I'd regret if I didn't mention. So many of those 80s franchises or movies that stand out where it's like the kids against the world,
Yes.
the Goonies and Monster Squad and the Lost Boys. Like there's all these moments where the world is in peril, and it would be, if it weren't for this ragtag group of friends, the world would be over. And
E.T.
Right,
all the
exactly.
kids. It saves, an alien.
It's like the theme of all these 80s movies, and I absolutely love it. And you can just feel that energy, especially when they get all suited up to go into the Upside Down. They're wearing like their army fatigues and combat boots and stuff. I just loved it. And I love that on the other side.
I got to mention that I can't help but think of Swamp Thing every time I see Vecna.
Every time you see that, I said the same
It's
thing.
the Swamp Thing costume.
The whole design, his nose,
everything.
So many things.
Just better. I mean,
Right.
it doesn't look like clearly like a rubber suit, but it's definitely just like a higher definition version of the Swamp Thing costume.
I saw the inspiration right away. I loved that.
Yeah.
The whole,
because there's a scene in Swamp Thing where they cut his arm, and it's one of the funniest scenes. It's actually I'm hoping it's on YouTube, but when his arm like grows back, Swamp Thing has like this little sprout come out, like a little leaf growing, and you can see the tentacles. And going back to what you mentioned about when Max was running, I really felt like Vecna let her go because I mean we all know he could have killed her. And
When I was watching it, I was half expecting one of those chunks to just pierce her right before
Oh
she
my
went
God.
through.
I was positive. Like the moment before she escaped, I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. A lot of people are complaining that the Duffers aren't killing off enough main characters, and for me, I don't feel like that's necessary.
Definitely not.
But I also feel like there's characters where I'm like, okay, they could die, and I'd be like, okay. For whatever reason, Steve is like my boy. Like that's
Oh, yeah.
my go-to
They
duder.
can't.
Yeah,
Like
they were originally going to kill off Steve.
it looked like they were gonna kill Steve like 8 times. I'm like,
They
no,
had planned to
Steve.
kill Steve off in season 1, but they liked him so much
Because he's amazing.
that
Right?
I love
they kept
Steve.
him on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's the best character. I feel like he's had the most development. I think
Exactly.
that's
Oh,
probably
Because
why.
I
easily.
kind of hated Steve season 1.
yeah,
There was a whole
everybody
point. He
did.
was just a jerk, and I'm like, he's terrible. He redeemed himself in so many ways, and man, that's the whole thing. The whole like Nancy and Jonathan and Steve
That
love
love
triangle
triangle.
thing
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going on
yeah.
there. Like I don't
There's a
even
lot
know.
of like hairy eyeballs going on. Like
I don't
what's
really
going
know
on?
how I even want that to turn out.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I was glad nothing actually came of it. Like,
I was glad too.
yeah,
I was like,
'cause
okay,
I was like,
nothing happened.
You're still in a relationship with Jonathan.
Yes.
Like, break up first, please. I have this thing where like I hate cheating in TV shows. It just bothers me so much.
Well, there's some classic '80s movies that we're all about that. Like there's one movie in particular. I think it's called Last American Virgin or something like that. It's got John Cryer in it, and there's a dude that reminded me of Steve's character, which I thought Steve was gonna be like, which is like the classic good-looking guy that's a jerk to girls. You know, that he was like prevalent in a lot of these '80s movies. Well, this movie in particular, John Cryer is like a Will character, like a soft. And I'm gonna derail this combo into this movie, but this movie like is like part of my psyche because it's like watching. Anyway, the plot of that movie was like this jock goes out with this girl and he like mistreats her, and she was a virgin. She gets pregnant, and he like dumps her.
Jeez.
And then John Cryer, who's always had this crush on her, kind of like swoops in and nurses her back to health and takes care of her. You know, she gets the pregnancy taken care of, but he nurses her back through that process. And as soon as she gets better, yes,
Oh.
she goes back with the jerk. Yeah, she goes back with the jerky guy. And I thought Steve was like that, but he's not.
No, I think we can like own it all to like Robin though. I think every relationship he ever had was with a girl was a I want you kind of relationship.
Yeah.
But I think Robin and I think the character development between the two of them were like we can be friends and you can be a guy and I can be a girl. It doesn't mean that it has to be anything more than just a friendship.
And I didn't know that she was Uma Thurman's daughter. Like, that was another thing, too.
Yeah, and
like, that's
Uma
wild.
Thurman and Ethan Hawke's kid. That's amazing. And,
And
you can
Ethan
see
Hawke.
that-
What the heck?
see
She
that-
has, like, the pedigree of,
Right,
like,
you can
the
see
best actors in the
acting
world.
chops are there.
Yeah.
She's also one of my favorite characters. Would be
Yeah.
crestfallen. I'm gonna lie. If we lost Nancy, I wouldn't be that mad about it. I'd be like, it sucks, but I'd be okay. I'd be all right. Like in comparison, Robin's up there as a favorite, and I also love this extra effort for those '80s influences. Vicky, who's playing Robin's love interest.
Yes.
I love that in
She
general.
felt
I love
very
how that,
pretty and pink to me.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes. She
they-
does.
The whole Molly Ringwald
She looks
thing,
like Molly Ringwald.
they
a
did that on
lot.
purpose. They matched the exact hair dye that they
No
had
sh-
from the movie. They researched it, they found it, and they used the exact same
She
one.
had the same look.
Well,
and I
that
mean,
scene in the gun shop, she had the hat, the
Yeah.
jacket,
The
the,
hat,
layers, everything was
everything.
perfect. I was like, oh my God.
they plucked her right out. I'm like, you
Breakfast
guys.
brunch.
Yes, Breakfast Club. So many moments like that.
Yeah.
And the Susie's sister was very Ali Sheedy. Like she
Yeah.
had that whole look to her.
Yeah.
Again, like
Yeah.
that whole influence is right there, and I kind of love it. It makes me think of like how many things like that are there that we maybe have missed or haven't focused on because they've just woven them in so seamlessly. I just love it. All these little nods to different inspirations, but it makes the character better. I love that I wonder now that it's that time skip like so Robin's journey, does she help Noah or Will through his journey?
Yeah, because they haven't had any.
Yeah, true. They haven't really
Interact-
met.
They haven't interacted really,
Yeah.
so there's no, maybe there's an opportunity there for there to be kind of like a guidance of like, oh, look, this yes, you can be yourself type of a thing, and just show you how. But also, there's this whole unrequited love where I think Will is like in love with Mike. Like, I think that's part of it. Started as like I don't want to lose my childhood type of thing. Like
It was kind of masked as that.
exactly. Like I just want to hang out with the guys, and I just want to just be nerds in our basement for the rest of our lives. I'm like, maybe that's like 10% it, but it's 90%. I don't want to lose you, and I'm losing.
If you heard in like that, when 11 and Mike were talking, like, oh, what's he drawing? 11 was like, oh, I don't know. And then later on, he goes, oh, yeah, she commissioned me to draw this.
Right.
So did that really happen? Or was he just kind of trying to say, like, I love you. Like, this is how I see you.
Exactly. As many you're the heart, Mike. Like as many moments as he can to have that. That's exactly what's going on there. Like he's trying to send that message, but he can't really come forward. So he kind of masks it as much as possible. Oh, man.
All right. Well, guys, we have a lot to look forward to in this next season. I know it's a long wait, but we look forward to hearing what our listeners think as well. Make sure you comment. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on Mission Control. And until next time, this is Ramon Peralta with Peralta Design, and we launch brands. Perfect.
Awesome.
Good, man. Good stuff. We're going a little longer than 2.
Thank you for taking this journey with us. To learn more about Peralta Design and our work, go to www.peraltadesign.com and subscribe to keep up with the crew.
We could do another one. Absolutely.
I really want to talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That's a
Talk
good
about
one.
that.
Yeah,
I haven't watched
so
it.
good.
George
has
just
now
George,
seen it,
George
and
just
he
finally saw it.
approves.
He watched it. He
Yeah,
liked
Yes.
it.
he liked it.
He just
so.
saw it and he was like, "This movie was amazing." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
I gotta
Kevin's
give it a
Kevin's
shot.
wrong.
Like he just like it's okay. You know, plenty of people don't like things that are good, and that's okay. You can like whatever you want, but that's cinema. That is filmmaking, and I loved it.
Yeah, and I just really want to talk about it.
And there's
keep
so
watching.
much
I wa-
more to talk about.
I
too.
keep watching videos of people who've never seen it, so I keep watching reaction videos of people watching it for the first time, just so I can re-experience that feeling.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful film too. Like,
If you want to start monetizing, maybe it's a pop culture.
I'm just that's all I'm throwing out there. I feel like we've got the cast. No, I want the.
Next time goes 6